The air in the village of Karangmulyo had always been heavy, but tonight it felt like lead. The moon was a pale, sickly sliver hanging over the jagged canopy of the ancient banyan trees. There is a specific kind of silence that precedes a tragedy, a silence where even the crickets stop their rhythmic chirping and the wind refuses to rustle the leaves. It was on such a night that the boundaries between our world and the realm of the forgotten began to blur. Most villagers had bolted their doors, fearful of the shadows that stretched too long under the moonlight, but some secrets refused to stay buried in the damp earth of the tropics. I remembered the smell first. It wasn't the scent of rain on dry soil or the musk of the jungle. It was jasmine, overpowering, sweet, and sickly. In our folklore, the smell of jasmine at midnight is never a good omen. It is the perfume of the dead trying to mask the stench of their own decay. As I walked down the narrow dirt path, the temperature plummeted. My breath hitched in my chest, turning into a faint mist. I felt 1,000 eyes watching me from the darkness of the banana groves, yet when I turned my flashlight toward the rustling leaves, there was nothing but the swaying shadows and the oppressive humidity of a night that refused to end. Then I saw her, a figure in white, standing perfectly still near the edge of the old stone bridge. Her hair was a waterfall of ink cascading down to her waist, obscuring her face entirely. She wore a long, flowing white kabaya that seemed to glow with an unnatural luminescence against the pitch-black surroundings. She didn't move, didn't breathe. She just stood there, a silent sentinel of the night. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Logic told me to run, to turn back to the safety of the flickering kerosene lamps of the village. But curiosity is a cruel master, and it pulled me closer to the woman who shouldn't have been there. As I approached, the sweet scent of jasmine was gradually overtaken by something more visceral, the copper tang of blood and the sour note of rotting meat. The transition was so subtle that by the time I realized it, the air was almost unbreathable. I called out to her, my voice trembling and thin in the vast emptiness of the night. "Excuse me, lady, do you need help?" No response. She remained as stationary as a marble statue. The sound of the nearby river seemed to grow louder, a rushing torrent that drowned out all other noise, as if the water itself were trying to scream a warning that I was too foolish to heed. She began to walk, but her feet didn't seem to touch the uneven ground. She glided with a terrifying grace toward the dense thicket of the woods. I followed, driven by an inexplicable compulsion. Every step felt like wading through deep water. The trees seemed to lean in, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out to snag my clothes. The deeper we went, the more the forest changed. The familiar landmarks of my childhood were replaced by twisted trunks and thorns that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The woman in white never looked back, her long hair swaying rhythmically, a dark pendulum counting down the seconds of my safety. Suddenly, she stopped in a small clearing where the moonlight managed to pierce through the canopy in a single cold spotlight. The jasmine smell vanished instantly, replaced entirely by the overwhelming stench of a shallow grave. My stomach churned. I stood 10 paces behind her, the silence now so profound it made my ears ring. I realized then that I couldn't hear any wildlife. No owls, no frogs, nothing. It was as if the forest itself had died. The woman began to let out a low, guttural sob. It wasn't the sound of a living person crying. It was a hollow, echoing vibration that seemed to come from the very earth beneath my feet. The sobbing turned into a high-pitched, manic laughter that chilled me to the marrow. She slowly began to turn around. My legs were paralyzed, rooted to the spot by a primal fear. I watched as her profile emerged from behind the curtain of black hair. Her skin was the color of parchment, stretched tight over her cheekbones. Her eyes were not eyes at all, but twin pits of darkness that held no light.
But it wasn't her face that held the true horror. As she rotated further, I saw the true nature of the creature before me. The Sundel Bolong, the legend I had heard since I was a child, was no longer a story. It was standing right in front of me, breathing the cold night air.
As she turned her back fully toward me, I saw the gaping, horrific void. A massive, jagged hole spanned from her shoulder blades down to her lower back. It wasn't a clean wound. It was a festering, cavernous opening into her very being. Inside, I could see the writhing movement of pale maggots and the glint of exposed, blackened ribs. The sight was so grotesque, so defying of nature, that my mind struggled to comprehend it. This was the mark of a woman who had died in childbirth, a soul whose pain and betrayal had manifested as a physical emptiness. The hole seemed to pulse, exhaling a mist of decay that filled the clearing and clouded my vision. She lunged toward me, not with her hands, but with a sudden, supernatural speed. I fell backward, scrambling on the dirt as she hovered over me. The stench was unbearable now, a physical weight pressing down on my lungs. Her face was inches from mine, her mouth opening to reveal rows of needle-like teeth. I closed my eyes, praying for a quick end, waiting for the cold touch of death. But instead, I felt a sudden gust of wind and the sound of a distant rooster crowing. The first light of dawn was beginning to bleed through the horizon, and the shadows that had felt so solid moments ago began to dissolve into the morning mist. When I opened my eyes, the clearing was empty. The woman, the smell of rot, and the oppressive weight were gone. I was alone in the woods, shivering and covered in cold sweat. I ran back to the village, not stopping until I reached the safety of my own home. My elders didn't ask questions. They saw the look in my eyes and knew I had encountered something that belonged to the night. To this day, I never walk near that bridge after sunset. Some things are better left in the dark, and some holes can never be filled. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates. Stay safe, and remember, if you smell jasmine tonight, do not turn around.